Satazius Next is the final game in our triptych of Astro Port shmups and is arguably the most polished of the three. More so than any of the others, it pays clear homage to specific shmups of the past, in this case Horis like R-Type, Gradius, and even in some aspects Darius. That's a tough bunch of customers with which to be forced to compare yourself, and while inevitably Satazius Next doesn't manage to make its way up to stand alongside such rarefied company as an equal, it doesn't embarrass itself in the attempt either. Before each game, as in Armed 7, players must choose from an extensive selection of weapons with which to arm their ship, in this case 4 different slots being available. 1 is your standard shot, 2 and 3 are special shots, only one of which can be used at a time, and the 4th slot is for a powerful charge attack. All these weapons can be leveled up through increasing stages of power by collecting pickups of the correct colour. Between each stage you can opt to change your loadout, but only the specific weapons you used will have been leveled up. This is quite an interesting system, as different stages really are suited to different weapons, with some borderline requiring specific weapons in order to progress. Stages are pretty long and feature the subgenre's standard mix of open areas with lots of enemies, alongside tighter, more corridor-like areas with background elements to watch out for. Several stages are also taller than the playable screen is high, providing multiple different routes, often with a very alternate set of enemies or challenges to overcome. Unlike in a lot of games like this, the harmful platforms or pillars or what have you in Satazius are always clearly defined as such, and it's very rare to experience that classic Euro shmup slap in the face of priming your craft right into an innocuous looking column at the end of a stage because you thought you could fly right past it. There are also several borderline puzzle-esque moments in the game that may require 2 or 3 tries for you to work out quite what to do and where to go in order to progress to stage end. These moments I feel are going to decide a lot how much any given player is going to like this game. Some people I know prefer this style, but for me they detract from what I come to shmups to get a fix of by slowing things down. Even for those who do like these sorts of moments, there are a couple in Satazius that are poorly handled, with sudden, completely unpredictable and unavoidable events resulting in cheap deaths that can cause frustration. Once having worked out the routes the game wishes you to take, future playthroughs of the title are far more enjoyable, but it was still when the game put those sorts of mechanics aside that I found it most enjoyable. Now, as with the other Astro Port games, the simple job of taking on the enemies is both highly fun and highly satisfying, and it was always a shame for me when, just as you're starting to get into that rhythm that Armed 7 so relentlessly maintains, things got broken up and you found yourself being inexorably trapped by a wall of moving blocks, which you now just had to wait to crash into. In contrast to those moments, however, there are some really rather cool set-piece elements that the game does a really good job of pulling off, often involving bosses chasing you as a thrilling precursor to the actual boss encounter itself. These at least partially make up for those previously mentioned missteps, and overall the level design and game progression is smart and engaging. Visually the game has, again like Armed 7, been spruced up in the Satazius Next edition with more colours and a more vibrant look. It's a marked improvement on the other Astro Port titles, and feels like it's had more work put into it visually. I like the look a lot, and the stages and attendant backgrounds are all both clearly separate from each other, while each remaining internally consistent, with many stages including a transition from one terrain or landscape to another at about the midway point. Audio is a big improvement on Armed 7, with catchy music, and while the sound effects won't be winning any awards, they aren't grating either. Enemies are both numerous and come in various shapes and forms, with airborne crafts mixing with ground or wall-based crawling enemies and static turrets, all of which are well animated and all of which offer further variety in the gameplay. Indeed, variety I would say may well be the game's strongest point, with all the weapon options, enemy types and background elements, meaning no 2 stages feel alike. Scores, like in the other 2 Astro Port games, are unfortunately not recorded in any sort of leaderboard, with just your highest score for each difficulty available to see, and even that only available during play. In this title it is slightly less of a miss, as despite offering several ways to score, the most major one being a set number of high point value stars scattered around each stage in hidden spots almost a la 90s collectathon platformers, this one is more about first working out how to progress and then, more importantly, actually doing so, and simply making your way to the end on anything above easy difficulty ought to offer most players a decent amount of playtime by itself. So just like with the previous two Astro Port titles, we have a solid title that harkens back to the old days, and even if it doesn't quite match them, can stand tall on its own merits. It ditches the simple, bordering sometimes on the basic nature of the other Astro Port titles, but what it makes up for in complexity is mitigated somewhat by those complexities not always being terribly well implemented or enjoyable. On a first run at least. On second, third and further playthroughs, the game reveals itself as a more consistently exciting game. It is, in other words, another highly enjoyable title, and I'd give it an 8 out of 10. If you've watched the previous two reviews of these Astro Port games, you'll know now that they've all been pretty decent games. They're all available individually from the eShop, but there's also a Shmup Collection containing all three, both digitally and physically, and I'll put up some abridged thoughts on each game in a review of the collection as a whole too, so do look out for that. As ever, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Cheers.